I'm actually reading, no big surprise, Steven Pinker's book. I'm a big fan of his ever since The Blank Slate. And because I think partly as a blogger, one is constantly focused on the last 24 hours. And what I try and do with The Dish is to talk about questions that are much larger than the contemporaneous. And to see humankind's evolution as one towards greater peaceableness, greater cooperation, and to support it very compellingly, and I think persuasively, with data that seem pretty hard to dismiss, changes our perspective. You know, we're the 9/11 generation in many ways, and we see through the distortion of terrorism, really, and through the media and through violence portrayed on the media, what is not actually, if one really takes a deep breath and zooms out, our reality. That's one reason why, even on The Dish, we have the view from your window. I wanted to find some way in the day to stop still and look and realize that the moments of the moment are not always that important, that we can get caught up in stuff that really is not that vital. It's transformative also because I think I long since jettisoned a Whig view of history, which is everything is inexorably leading towards greater and greater levels of progress and freedom, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's corrective to that anti-Whiggery to acknowledge that, no, there are some patterns. There really are some patterns. You saw this also in Bob Wright's rather brilliant book, or two books, Non-Zero and The Evolution of God. The idea that we are becoming better through our societies, through living with each other, dealing with each other, creating more and more non-zero-sum transactions between one another. Even when we uncover destructive and violent technologies, that we can learn not to use them, such as the nuclear bomb, which we have not used remarkably in the half-century since it was created, except at the very beginning, and haven't used partly because of that beginning, partly because to see the devastation of it actually taught us we can learn. We're not an inherently self-destructive species, and at some point, for example, we'll figure out that destroying our own planet isn't good for us either. I found that kind of a tonic and fascinating. There's one interesting part of it which I bring up simply because we've been having this debate on The Dish about Adam and Eve, that he points out that from the transition from being hunter-gatherers to the first people that settled down and cultivated, created agricultural settlements, actually showed an increase in violence because there were territories to police, there were solid goods to protect and to steal, and that humankind developed a kind of cultural memory of an old way of being that was less complex and less violent and dangerous than the ones that they entered into, and actually possibly better off. Until, of course, we came to the very modern era. And that could be, and probably is, the inspiration for the myth, the story of Genesis, of the Garden of Eden, of Adam and Eve. An illustration to me of the argument that we were having on The Dish about what is real and what is true. It is not real that Adam and Eve existed in the Garden of Evil with a serpent 6,000 years ago, and from that, and at that moment, the earth and all the universe was created. It is not true. We know it is not true. And God gave us minds. He didn't give them to us not to use them. But at some level, upon further reflection, it is true. We do, as a species, have a memory somehow collectively of our past, things that it has taught us, that it has affected us, that has created, and this is where E.O. Wilson's new book sounds very interesting, in which we're actually genetically engineered to get better, not to harm each other as much, not to kill each other and hurt each other as much, to be civilized towards our fellow humans, and indeed even to animals and the wider world of creation. That to me is a thrilling idea. It helps put into mind, in my case, the three words in the Lord's Prayer that I always had a problem with, which is, thy kingdom come. Meaning, let it be done on earth as it is in heaven. That this is in some ways a commitment to making our world, our human world, better and more in line with the boundless goodness of God, and that we can do it, and that we have done it. So I've always been a sort of skeptic of eschatology in religion, that things are moving towards a gradual end, a gradual moment. But sometimes the arc of history seems to echo a notion of a providence directed by God in some way, even if it's a direction that comes entirely through nature and through our genes. And so finally, the end times, instead of being understood through this Old Testament view of calamity and catastrophe, is really about the infinitely long journey. I mean, this is an arc of history that is barely bent at all, but is, to a better way of being, to heaven on earth, to thy will being done on earth, and therefore the kingdom coming towards us. It's not that we left a brilliant and beautiful holy world in the origins of Christianity and have been sinking slowly into violence and destruction and vanity and narcissism ever since, but that in fact God's ahead of us, and that we are, Jesus revealed this to us, but that we are moving slowly towards him. That's an exciting idea, and the fact that it's being buttressed now by more and more scientific research, that we seem within our very genetics to be capable of obviously both good and evil, but that good can actually help us, and that advantage gives it an advantage, that good wins in the end. In the end. It seems to me that there is a convergence of Christian theology actually right now, and science. And so it's such a paradox in a way that organized Christianity at this moment should be so hostile to science, when it is revealing so many things that if we could just let go a little bit and think and pray, might actually inform our faith rather than threaten it.